What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror. I am Ken Sledge, and I am so pleased to announce that today I have one of my good friends and my personal hero, Chris Conley, lead singer, guitar player for Saves the Day. Chris, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Ken. I'm psyched to be here, man. This is rad.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So for those of you that don't know, growing up, Saves the Day has always been my favorite band, and I was so lucky enough when I married my wife, we had our first dance to the song Undress Me by Saves the Day. And recently, for my wife's birthday, Chris was kind enough to play an acoustic rendition of that song for us. And I'm going to have the link to that in the description so you guys can check that out. So it's something that's very special to me. Chris, again, in front of the whole world, I want to say thank you so much for taking your time and doing that for me and my wife.
Oh, absolutely, dude. That was the pleasure was all mine on that one. I had a lot of fun building the backing track for that because I wanted to play on top of a beat, so it gave you guys something more to dance with, because the guitar is a little sparse in that song, sort of spread out notes. Sure. And so I wanted you guys to have that backbeat. But that wound up being so much fun that I decided to make Undress Me the Bug Session single for our July Patreon. And working on that was so much fun. So I just have to thank you for sort of initiating that effort. And because I had the time of my life doing it. And that was so special. Getting to watch you guys dance was a really special moment for me as a person, because it was really meaningful, obviously, but watching the two of you dance and hold each other, man, I got so emo.
It's funny you say that, because in high school, I've said this before, but my nickname in high school was Emo Kid Kenny. So
oh, that's rad. I just got the emo goosebumps. I get them all the time.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So we are here today to talk about, before we get into it though, we're going to talk about Chris's first horror movie. I know things have been kind of crazy with you right now with COVID and everything. You got any updates you can give us on anything you got going on, Chris, or is it still kind of up in the air with everything?
Oh, it's in terms of like touring and whatnot? Yeah, I think right now everything is still kind of being figured out pretty much day to day, because I think that's how everybody's learning about how the future is unfolding just as we go. So we don't have any concrete plans yet, but there are a lot of tentative talks about what's going to happen next year. Obviously, everything is. I don't think there are going to be any concerts at all until next year, which is just gnarly, because if I was for 20 years, I was traveling and regularly playing shows. So this is the longest stretch I've been home at one time since leaving for my very first tour after graduating high school. So it's just like, yeah, all of a sudden it's a very different experience, but you just got to kind of go with it and do the best you can. I mean, it's a lot worse for people that are actually losing their loved ones and whatnot.
Sure.
I don't, so far I've only really known a couple people that have had COVID. And it's just scary, so I definitely have the perspective that I'm extremely lucky.
Right. And I personally, like I said, I've been able to have a few conversations with you now. I can call you a friend. And as a human being, I want to say thank you for all the precautions that you take in your life to stop the spread of COVID and to stop you and your beautiful family from getting it. So thank you for taking it seriously. It really means a lot to us.
It's serious. A good friend of mine is a nurse in Rhode Island, and she said it's basically like a war zone. Mm-hmm. It's definitely real. It hasn't come out west as much as it has hit hard on the East Coast, but it's making its way out here. So I think we all just have to be really, really careful.
Love each other, Yes, that's what I can think of it, man. Like
I did this show with with my friend Zicky Dice on Twitch TV last week, and Zicky had a motto that was ELE, everybody love everybody. And I really dug that. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's awesome. And that's how we should feel. It's about time that we just do the things that we can to take care of each other. What
would Zicky do?
There, I'm in. WWZD. I got it.
Yeah, dude.
Well, now we are going to talk about your first horror movie, so let's talk horror. Today we are going to be talking about your first horror movie, which was
Friday the 13th.
May 9th, 1980. The only reason I remember that is that's my son's birthday, May 9th, and it came out in 1980.
Amazing. That's when it came out, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, that's so cool. I was, let's see, I would have been March, April. I would have been 3 months old. About 3 months and a week old. I was born in 1980. Yeah, and they made it in New Jersey. It was filmed in New Jersey, the movie.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of wild, like watching some of the shots where they're driving along these long roads and there's like a big red barn and a white house. That is exactly what it looked like where I grew up. So it's kind of weird. I watched it this morning, and it's just weird how nostalgic it makes me. The location, the shooting. I also grew up going to camps. Like every summer I was at camp. So and they really looked like that camp there. And so it's almost like it's creepy because it feels so close to home. And we had this amazing VHS video store on the corner, like maybe a couple miles from where I grew up, on this corner store. And right above the corner store was the video rental store. And I would go in there, and my parents were pretty chill about letting me rent like whatever.
Yeah.
And so I must have seen it when I was like 8 or 9 years old. Like I saw that for the first time when I was 8 or 9 years old. And honestly, watching it today, I wasn't that shocked that my parents let me watch it because it's pretty tame.
Yes.
It's a relatively tame horror movie. And the thing that I loved the most right away is the music.
Mm-hmm.
It really brought me back to that first time watching it. And it seems like a minimal soundtrack, a minimal score. But it's really effective. And the first thing that I really loved is how the one of the first musical motifs is kind of like someone breathing and saying, it's like, that's some cool shit.
Yeah.
I got psyched on that when I heard it. It really brought me back. And then there's like these high keyboard notes that are like minor second rubbing notes, like two notes next to each other that are rubbing. And so it just makes you feel uneasy, because that you always want those notes to resolve because they're too close to each other. So they either need to go back to the home note, the first note, or drift farther apart so they sound more like a pleasant harmony. Anyway, it was really nice hearing the music, and it's cool how the score builds, because by the end of the movie you have these like stabbing strings and whatnot, and like weird horns and stuff, and so it helps like to heighten the mood and the tension. So I think the music is really, really effective. And there's almost there's sort of that goofy element of like early 80s horror movies too, where the main characters are sort of oblivious to what's going on. They're totally like acting like, I mean, it's kind of hack acting almost. Hacking.
Trademark.
But yeah, it's really enjoyable. I really like the movie. The thing that surprised me the most watching it again was there's no hockey mask in it.
Right. Yep.
They
There's no
have, Jason's in the water at the end.
Yep.
And that's extremely creepy. Like, so Mrs. Voorhees comes into the picture like way late. And you can kind of see she's wearing the shirt under a sweater that the killer has been wearing the whole time. This like plaid shirt. But she's acting really hella creepy. So like right away you're like, oh my God, is this the killer? But then she starts telling the story about Jason drowning, and they flash to him in the water for a second. And so I paused it on that screen where you see him, and man, he looks terrifying. That kid looks friggin' terrifying. He looks like an alien.
Yeah.
If you go back and watch
the head.
Yeah, dude, he looks like one of those autopsied aliens. It's like
Area 51 guys, man.
Extremely creepy. And then when homie at the end, like she's out in the boat, I think her name is Alice. She's out in the boat because like she pushes out into the water to get away from Mrs. Voorhees after she's like knocked her unconscious. Jason like pops out of the water and pulls her under. And so he's in it, but no mask. So right. I don't know. Do you know when they bring the mask in? Because I love number 3. It's so iconic. It's like one of the most. I think it was probably one of my favorite like visual motifs in a horror movie.
Yep. And it's funny because in part 2 is one where he wears like a burlap sack over his head with the one eye cut out.
Oh, wild.
And then part 3, he actually gets it.
Tonight.
Yeah, part 3, he gets it from Shelly, who's like a prankster. And he ends up shooting him with the harpoon gun, and then he takes that hockey mask off and puts it on himself.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's
the origin of the mask.
Yeah. Friday the 13th, like I said, I got the whole collection here. It's actually one of my favorite slashers. Yeah.
That's one of your favorites?
Oh, yeah. It's one of the ones that, even the ones that are so, like with Freddy, I love Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, heck yeah. Me too.
When you get to, like, the Dream Child and Freddy's Dead, it's just so over-the-top goofy that it's almost a comedy at this point. But with Friday the 13th, even when they get super campy, it's still Jason is still Jason.
Right.
You know, like there's no comedy to him. Like he's still just this badass killer guy.
That's true. He's terrifying.
Yeah. And you're talking
the whole
about
thing with his mom that's very like Psycho. The movie Psycho.
Yes. You know how, and that's how I've always felt to Jason. He's the very, very monstery version of Norman Bates.
That's really cool. That's super. That feels like you're right on with that.
Yeah. And you were talking about how this is tame now. And it is true. Like you watch this movie, you don't see a lot of the kills in it. They go off camera or, to the side.
Yeah, and then they'll like pan back and somebody's like strapped to a tree with an axe in their face.
Which something I've always been a fan of is that we're talking about Psycho actually, that Hitchcockian using your imagination. Like I'm not going to show you what happens. Me too.
That's such an amazingly powerful trick that directors do. It's like Jaws. You don't see Jaws at first. Like it's very late and like you're terrified by the music.
Mm-hmm. See, I love the fact that you keep bringing up music because to me, the top 3 most iconic music themes is you have Star Wars. Everybody knows the Star Wars theme, the Imperial March, and then Jaws is another one, and then Halloween. That keyboard lick in Halloween.
Totally.
Even people that have
that could be a 9 Inch Nails song.
Even the people that have never seen these movies, if they hear the Imperial March or the Jaws or Halloween theme, they know right away what that's from, and that shows you the power of the score in a movie. How that can really be almost as powerful as the movie.
Yeah, I'm getting emo goosebumps again thinking that. Slasher goosebumps.
There you go. Slash bumps. I like those too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you think of the first Friday the 13th movie, what's the first thing that pops into your head?
I remember my dad always told me that his friend was the guy driving the red truck when he picks up the cook in the beginning. Mm-hmm. She stops at like a corner store, and there's a guy named Enos who gives her a ride in his truck. And my dad would always tell me when I was a kid, that's my friend Mike Stabile. And he's the guy that owns Wild West City. When I was a kid, I really liked cowboys. So I'd like to dress up like a cowboy. And they had this town in New Jersey, called Wild West City, and there were like saloons, and it was set up. There's like sheriff's, whatever building or whatever they call they call that, and you could pretend you were like a cowboy walking around. And when I was a little kid, I loved that. And the guy that owned it was Mike Stabile. And then my dad told me that he's the guy driving the truck. So every time I see the movie, I remember meeting the man. I met him a million times. We'd go there a lot. And like my dad was always really proud that he knew the guy driving the truck in the beginning of Friday the 13th. And then that sort of calls to mind that whole area of New Jersey that's very familiar to me, and those camps that I used to go to when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And at first, I thought before I rewatched it, to freshen up, I thought of the hockey mask.
Right.
Yeah.
See, and it's crazy how, like you said, going to camp and all that. That's why I like to talk to people about the first horror movie they ever watched, because who knows how different that would have been for you without Friday the 13th. Going to camp and all that stuff, how different the perspective of that might have been for you had it not been for watching these movies.
That's true. Camp was always slightly terrifying.
Right.
if you had to walk to the cabin where the bathrooms were in the middle of the night, you hear that.
Either that, in the 80s, you had a bunch like Sleepaway Camp. You had a bunch of those movies that were camp based, so that was something.
Yeah,
and,
I felt like most of them.
Yeah, so that's why I like to do this, man, because to me, and you've probably seen me talk about it in other episodes, but I compare it to drugs. You get that first one, and then you're always chasing the dragon after that, trying to relive that first scare. And for you
I
going
have
to
no
camp,
idea what you're talking about, Ken.
It's just one of those things that you going to camp. I know you guys, mess with each other at camp and stuff, and it's because of those movies, and it's really cool. Man.
I was the kid that got messed with.
If you would have showed up with like a cowboy, man.
I know, that they would have teased me for that too. They learned it by watching these movies.
Yeah, dance, boy. Go back to the future.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So with Friday the 13th, we were talking about it's not too gory, it's not too bad, but my favorite kill in this movie is the Kevin Bacon on the bed kill.
Oh,
I love the practical effect.
The effects are pretty good, even now that it's like in HD. It like looks really good now that it's sort of restored. I guess when they put them out digitally, the effects still looked pretty good. Like you can kind of tell where they have like the putty or whatever on his neck, but they got the tone of it pretty good. So it suspends disbelief, and the look in his eyes when that thing comes through his neck is just pretty haunting.
Yeah.
And I love that Kevin Bacon's in it.
Yeah. Like that's something that a lot of people, that's actually how they got some of the female actresses to sign on, because I watched the special features on here, and he was so good looking that's why a lot of the female cast signed on to the movie.
That's so badass.
Yeah. Imagine having that on your resume. Like I had women sign on to the movie because
imagine being that dude. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, man. So that was my favorite kill. Do you have a favorite kill in this movie, or?
Yeah. I think the one that I thought looked the wildest was, I forget her name, but it's Kevin Bacon's like love interest. She goes off to use the bathroom, and she comes out of the stall and here's somebody in there, and then she's like looking for them, I guess, in the showers. Yeah. And she goes to like pull open a curtain, and you see like the shadow of the axe like behind her. And then she turns around and it cuts away. So you don't see him like land the axe in her face. but like then it slowly like pans back, and you just start to see her face, and her eyes are all bugged out. And then you see an axe just planted in her face. And it looks like the effects are pretty darn good. So it looks pretty real. And so that's another extremely haunting moment. But I just thought it was visually pretty stimulating.
Tom Savini actually did the makeup for this movie, and you're right. The practical effects in this movie are just so on point, even for the low budget that they had. And to see what this spawned, into.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really wild what a cultural phenomenon it became. But I really I think in particular, the blood looks really good. Yeah.
See, and that's the thing with you watch these older movies. I've always been a fan of practical effects over CGI.
For sure.
When you watch like Freddy vs. Jason, and you see the kid get cut in half in the hallway, and you see that CGI blood, it looks awful. Like it doesn't look real.
I don't think I've seen that. I got to see it. I'd be disappointed, huh? Okay, it's fun.
It's not a great movie, but it is so much. It's Freddy and Jason beating each other's ass in a movie, man. It's so much fun.
Oh, I got to see it.
But the CGI in it, I would take Friday the 13th practical effects over any CGI nowadays every day of the week.
Oh, definitely. Me too. I love it. And it's very impressive that they did that.
Absolutely. Is this movie like one that you would watch often, or was this kind of just like a one and done type?
I rented it so many times. I would rent it, and then I would go through the whole series. And then they would come. This was very early because I was born in 1980 when the first one came out. And my parents started letting me watch almost kind of whatever movie I wanted when I was pretty young, like 8 or 9. And so by the time I was like 10, and if they put out a new one, I got to see it like as it came out. So I followed the series all the way through till I think the last one I saw was like they're on like a cruise ship or something outside of Manhattan.
Yep. Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yeah. That's the last one. I think I saw that one in the theater too, and probably with Ted Alexander, who used to be in Saves the Day, because we'd always go go and get a little weird in the parking lot and go watch the movie. So I would rent all of them like multiple times. So when I would get through to like the last one that had recently come out, I go back to the original Friday the 13th. Yeah. And so I would constantly watch. I rented these movies a lot. I was sort of a maniac like that. I still am. I still watch the same stuff just over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So I would go and like, if I wasn't renting Rambo or something, I would go and rent like Nightmare on Elm Street, all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, or Friday the 13th. Part 3 or whatever for the millionth time.
Yeah. It's so cool to hear you say that, man, because not a lot of people know this. I think I talked about it in one of my videos, but when I was a little boy, we owned a video store. My family did.
Yeah,
Downtown
that's
Video.
so cool. You told me that's so rad.
Yeah, and that's how I got my love. When we shut the store down, we kept 90% of these VHSs. So I think that's why my movie library in my brain is so big, because I just had these movies laying around. So
and
we would just watch.
And the poster that you showed me of you and Ashley is a movie poster.
Yeah.
That's so sick, man. I love that. I love that you're so passionate about it. I really believe in following the things that you genuinely love so much. And so that was one of the reasons I was so excited to do this too, because he told me how passionate you are about it. And I think that's such a rad part of the origin story, that your family had the VHS, the video store.
Yeah.
That's really dope.
And it's funny because, like, you talked about Ashley, my wife. A lot of people on this channel don't know much about Ashley, but she's as much into horror movies as me. Our first date that we ever went on, we went to the movies to see War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise.
Oh,
like,
hell
that was the first date that we ever went on, So it's one of those things where horror movies in general, is something that's very close. That's probably the thing about it being on my selfish part here with the COVID and everything, is I can't take my wife to the movies right now, and the closest drive-in is so far away, and
you gotta get one of those projector things for your Apple TV, or they'll just shoot it on a wall.
Yeah, we got one downstairs, man.
Oh, hell yeah!
I had to get one, man. Like that was our thing, Applebee's and going to the movies. That was our thing, man.
That's dope. I love it.
Yeah, it's so cool. So we talked about your first horror movie being Friday the 13th. Let me go scream on you. What is your favorite scary movie? If you had to pick one movie that you think you could watch more than any other, what would your choice be?
This is a kind of a weird one, but I love The Ninth Gate.
Okay.
You ever seen that with Johnny Depp?
Johnny Depp.
It's Roman Polanski, so he's like controversial figure in society, but I think he's an incredible director. I think he did Rosemary's Baby, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so The Ninth Gate is a movie that he put out in, I think, 1999 maybe, or the early 2000s, and we went, when we were on tour, one of these early tours that we were on, that came out, and we went to see it in the theater multiple times. It's Brian Newman and I just loved that movie. And now that as I've gotten older and I've become like a much weirder person and into like tarot cards and stuff, it's cool. It's cool to me because that whole movie is unfolds around like symbolism from the tarot.
I didn't know that part of it.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. So it's like a very esoteric screenplay.
Okay.
And so like I love all the occult shit in it.
I'm gonna have to rewatch this. I remember watching it. I remember when you said it, that Johnny Depp came up, and for some reason, like Gates with Hell. Is that the cover of it?
That's the poster.
Okay. And so I do remember it.
9 Gates of Hell.
Okay. I'm gonna have to rewatch this movie,
I don't know if you're going in or out.
Right. Real quick, I gotta ask you this: is that a Sgt. Pepper's poster in the background?
It's actually that's an original copy of Sgt. Pepper's, the album. That's the LP. So that's came out. That one's from 1967.
Dude, that is so awesome.
Yeah, it's not dope. A friend of mine got me that, and I have 2 copies of it. One of them's here. This is where we all sit when we're at the studio. This is like the lounge of the studio, and this is where. This is like we all just like hang out on these black and red couches. And this is my dog Joe right here. So anyway, I have one Sgt. Pepper's here, and right above it, you could see right above it up there is the original Beatles album.
Dude.
introducing the Beatles.
So sick.
So because this is like this is the spot where a lot of music is either talked about or played or developed. We sit here and we sort of talk. This is where Max and I wrote the first Two Tongues record, like sitting right here. But since this is a place where a lot of musical ideas happen, I have the first Beatles album right above Sgt. Pepper's to remember, like, you can always keep growing and getting more and more weird. Like, never be afraid to try out the craziest ideas. Like, just
the
don't
Beatles,
be afraid to get. And then
they don't get the credit.
The second copy is right above in my control room. It's right above the window that looks into the live room. So I always have like Sgt. Pepper's like in the spots where I need to be most creative.
That's awesome, because the Beatles, they get a lot of credit for being an amazing rock and roll band, but they don't get the credit they deserve for being an experimental rock band.
Oh, definitely, dude. With a little help from their friends, they got super, super weird.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the Beatles until I wound up like randomly discovering this tape in the back of my car when I was on the way to a mixing session for Through Being Cool. I was like rummaging around in the back of my car. I had this box of tapes. And I just grabbed one, and it was the Beatles' greatest hits for the second half of their career. So it was all the weirder, like, Stony stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know whose tape it was. It wound up in my car like magically. And I put it in, and it was all the weird songs, and I liked it right away. And that's how I got into the Beatles, is through all the weird stuff. The other day I was at the grocery store, and I have this like vintage Beatles pen that says "From Us to You," I think. And it's got all four of their faces on it. And Luella, my daughter's granddad, gave that to me, and he actually got it like back in the day. But anyway, I was wearing that at the grocery store, and the lady checking me out was saying how much she loves the Beatles, and she said how they're by far the best boy band that ever existed. And I was like, that's so funny. I always forget that they started as like this pop group.
Yeah.
So that's a wild thing to think about too, how they were basically like a boy band. And then, like, Bob Dylan introduced them to marijuana.
Well, I mean, if you listen to "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and then you listen to, stuff from Sgt. Pepper's.
I Am the Walrus.
Oh man, like so.
What the hell?
Like,
and those
my
are written by the
favorite
same
Beatles
like
song.
John Lennon wrote both of those songs, and within only a handful of years, he's going from "I Want to Hold Your Hand" to "I Am the Walrus."
Right.
That's crazy.
To me, my personal favorite Beatles song will always be "Eleanor Rigby."
I love that song. That's one of my favorite songs to sing. I'm going to do that for one of the Bug Sessions covers coming up. Maybe I'll do it for next month.
Everybody watching, I'm going to put their Patreon down here. I'm a subscriber to their Patreon. I strongly suggest you do the same. Oh, dude, I love it. You don't only get good music, good new music, but you're also going to get cooking recipes. You get a lot of fun, cool stuff.
Guitar tutorials. There's going to be like behind the music videos, like talking about dissecting the lyrics and stuff like that. And on Saturday, I know you were Saturday, you were on your way back from, or you were still on your vacation. But we had a Zoom Q&A hangout. We hung out for like an hour and a half basically everybody's just becoming friends.
It's so awesome, man.
So yeah, you're gonna love the Zoom hangouts. It's really like intensely fun. It feels like a little community. And we were talking about how it's been a really great way to connect and not feel so alone during all this Corona stuff. And so it's been a real extreme pleasure. And so thanks for promoting that, but also thank you for the idea to do Eleanor Rigby possibly for the next cover. I think I've been wanting to do it, but it hasn't felt like the right time, because it's a pretty emo song. It's a really sad song.
It really is, man.
And everything was like pretty darn intense for the last few months, but I feel like in August, it might be the time for like the emo song might be appropriate, maybe speak to people's emotions, and because we're sort of unwinding from the anger and realizing there's how much sadness is underneath all that anger.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the time to do it.
I would love it, man. Like I said, my favorite Beatles song sung by my favorite vocalist. So it's
sick.
You can't get much better than that.
Yeah, dude, you're inspiring so much Patreon content.
One last thing I want to ask you about the movie before I let you go. I always do at the end a skull count. 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. Friday the 13th, where are you ranking that in your skulls?
I'll go 4 skulls. Four Skulls.
I agree. And not only because of the movie it is, but what you look at everything you wouldn't have in the horror genre today without Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it's so iconic.
Yeah.
It's so iconic. And I feel like it's like the quintessential like slasher at a campsite. The perfect.
To me, personally, this was my first whodunit movie.
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Oh
kid,
yeah.
Like, I never really thought of that as a whodunit, but it really is. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love whodunit. Whodunit genre is one of my faves.
It's amazing. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do want to say this. I've been waiting for this. I've talked to Chris about this about a month ago, but I'm going to start signing off all my episodes with Stay What You Are, not just because that album changed my life entirely, but I feel right now, especially with what we're going through across the whole planet right now, we need to remember to just be true, be pure, be good people to each other. So Stay What You Are, I think, is the best message I could put out there for you guys. We talk about horror movies.
Yeah. It's super important to like really focus on what you really, really love too. Because, life is really precious. And every moment matters. So to focus on what you really, really love, that's such a part of who you are.
Yep. I appreciate that, man. And like I said, I've said this on probably every episode, but without the music I grew up with and the movies I grew up with, I wouldn't be the man I am today. So it's a true story. I've talked to you about this, but man, the first time I seen the Shoulder to the Wheel music video, I had a stand-up mirror in my basement, and I would stand in front of that mirror and try to mimic what you were doing. I remember me and my cousin Josh, who's also a huge fan, we filmed, I got to try to find this. We filmed our own little scene by scene of that music video. And I remember just standing next to him by his car with my scarf on, like, please, Dave, just drive.
Oh,
like,
if you ever find that, I'd love to see that. That's awesome.
Dude, I will absolutely, I'm going to try to find it tonight. It's something that, like I said, your band has meant the world to me. Everybody that knows me knows. It started with the Benjamins. I don't know if you ever listened to the Benjamins or not.
No, I don't think I've heard that.
I heard them on a drive-through record sampler. And I went home and I got on Napster, and they used to have a Bands That Sound Like tab on there.
Oh, that's cool.
I found Saves the Day, and the first Saves the Day song I ever heard was Rock's Tonic Juice Magic.
Oh, that's awesome. Talk about a slasher.
Dude, that right there, I was hooked, man. Like, that song to this day is still, every time I hear
imagery, that's imagery straight out of a horror movie.
Rub it against your thigh.
That's what that is. That's what that is. That's straight up slasher.
Maybe that's why that song stuck with me so much.
It might be, honestly.
But I want to thank you so much for coming on. Don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you a little bit more.
All right.
Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. I'm Ken Sledge. He's Chris Conley. Remember, stay what you are, guys.
Thank you, guys.